Hello, good evening. Welcome to Aro Ling Cardiff. This evening we have Ngakma Nor'dzin continuing to talk to us about the vehicles. This evening we have the 9 vehicles of the Nyingma School. So over to Ngakma Nor'dzin.
Good evening. As Ngakma Nor'dzin said, tonight we're talking about the 9 vehicles. Last time we looked at vehicles in general, and so we're continuing from there, and things are becoming a bit more specific, shall we say. But the essence of what a vehicle is remains the same. Somewhere where we start, a path that we follow or method that we follow, and a result that comes from that. We have another chart that we can, yes, please, that I can talk a little bit about. Thank you. I hope that's all reasonably readable. What I'm showing here are the 9 vehicles of the Nyingma, and these are in the central column of the chart, going from where we begin, the Srivakayana at the bottom, to Ati Yoga at the top. And what I've tried to indicate in the first 2 columns is something of the qualities and how these qualities change as you move through the vehicles. So in the first column, we have sutric vehicles, 3 sutric vehicles, and 6 tantric vehicles. Now, with the sutric vehicle, the emphasis is on renunciation, that the neuroses and our neurotic reactions to circumstances are best addressed by renunciation, which is to say, to move away in some fashion from the causes and conditions that create those reactions. The tantric vehicle has quite a different approach, because it sees the energy of our neurotic responses to circumstances as being a direct indication of our realized nature. So instead of wanting to step away from it, instead of wanting to lose that energy, there's a sense in which we can harness that energy, and through transformation practices understand the pure, undistorted nature of that energy, which is in fact the realized state. The next column adds a little bit more detail to that, in terms of, if we start at the bottom, we're looking at Mahayana vehicles, that is to say, the vehicles that are practiced with the motivation of oneself, one's own interest in what one is doing. Then we move towards the Mahayana vehicles, where there's an opening of the scope of our interest, and we move into wishing to benefit all beings. It should be said at this point that this motivation is not lost as we move into vehicles further up the chart. That motivation is the basis for everything that continues from there as well. So we have 3 vehicles that are classed as outer Tantra. And so although the main emphasis on Tantra is one of transformation, the outer Tantras have a lot to do with purification, and we'll come on to that as we go through them. Then we have the inner tantric vehicles, which I've divided into two sets because they have a slightly different, well, quite a different quality about them. The first two of the inner tantric vehicles, Maha Yoga and Ati Yoga, are directly concerned with the transformation of our energetic nature. And then the innermost of the tantras is concerned with self-liberation, which is the sense of everything is liberated in the moment of its arisal. So we're going to go on something of a journey from here on in terms of the vehicles. I should say that the Aro lineage itself is from the viewpoint of Dzogchen, which in this diagram is also known as Ati Yoga. And the viewpoint of Dzogchen is that realization is already present. We have that already. We just don't understand that it's there. We're missing it ever so slightly. And from that point of view, a vehicle is something we can practice if we find ourselves in the right condition for that vehicle. So although these vehicles are arranged in a certain order, we may find ourselves in a condition which indicates a particular vehicle that we can practice, even if yesterday or whenever we were practicing something else. It depends on our condition, on our understanding of our condition, and maybe the indications of our teacher. There are also sequential and non-sequential approaches to the vehicles. A sequential approach would be one that says you have to start at the first vehicle, that will lead you on to the next, and so forth, which from a point of view is correct, but from the point of view of Dzogchen, it's not necessary. As I say, wherever you find yourself, that you will find yourself at the in an appropriate condition to practice a vehicle, and you don't have to work through them in order. So that's by way of a general introduction. So if we begin with the vehicles, and we begin with the Srivakayana vehicle, there are slightly different views on this, but the main view that is held is these are the people who hear the teachings or read the teachings or even attend retreats and workshops, but aren't immediately motivated towards practice. So there's some sort of interest there, but it's a bit on the academic side, wanting to know something more about it, but not feeling quite so moved to be a practitioner. One of the translations, some of the comments along the side had just come out of a dictionary. One of the translations of Srivaka is pious attendant. So they have good motivation towards what's happening, but they're more likely to be found attending to the teacher or the teaching rather than practicing themselves. As I say, it's a starting point, and this is reflected in our everyday lives. There's something that you become interested in. Why you become interested in it could be a complete mystery, but you might be interested in learning about the violin or learning about photography, and you could read a lot about that. And what we find after a while is that just reading about it doesn't really go anywhere. And then you feel moved towards actually doing something about it. And from that point, you move into the next vehicle, the vehicle of the Pratyeka Buddha, the vehicle of the solitary realizer, or sometimes called silent Buddha. I thought that was interesting. And this is the vehicle of somebody who takes up the violin or whatever, and is learning that. Could be meditation, could be many things, but for their own benefit. They can see that they're interested in it. They become quite enthusiastic about it. They want to hear more about it, but above all, they want to practice it, but they want to practice it particularly for themselves. In terms of motivation for practice, one of the things that we find when we become sufficiently enthused about something is that we want to share that enthusiasm. Now, if it's a musical instrument or if it's something like photography, you enjoy talking about it with other people, you enjoy practicing in some way with other people, or at least you want other people to enjoy what you're doing as well. So the motivation begins to open out. In terms of meditation practice, if you start to feel that there's been some benefit for you in practicing meditation, you start to feel, well, this could benefit other people as well. And I really want to share that with them. Or at the very least, I want to make it part of my practice, that whatever the results of my practice are, it leads to benefit for other people, whether they become practitioners or not. It might be that it's a change in my attitude, a change in my approach to life, but I want that to be beneficial to other people. Now, this change of motivation is quite explosive, really, because suddenly that becomes more complete in terms of how you are in everyday life. You can't separate the practices that you're doing from how you are, because if you really want to benefit other people, it's not some mystery people out there, some mythical concept of a person you'd like to benefit. It's everybody you meet. So wherever you happen to find yourself, you're always with someone to whom you can be motivated to be of benefit. And that is a great spur to practice. It really broadens the scope of one's motivation. Now, while I was looking at the 9 jhanas, I came across a piece that was written by Ngakma Nor'dzin in her book, Spacious Passion. And this is quite old now. I think it's 2007.
My first book.
Yeah. So this is an explanation of these jhanas in terms of everyday experience. I was fascinated by the ideas and methods I studied, but I did little more than read for a couple of years. I had the same experience. I thought at some point I thought it reads well enough. How on earth does it live? Can people actually live these teachings? I read the words, but did not identify their relevance in terms of applying them to my own life circumstances. This was Srivakayana. I was hearing or reading about Dharma, but only engaging with it in an intellectual or philosophical manner, rather than feeling it had relevance in my life. Then something prompted me to actually try out the methods and receive teachings directly from a Lama. Through experiences of unhappiness and dissatisfaction in my life, I was prompted to move my intellectual interest in Buddhism to another stage. I had developed some confidence in the Dharma, that Dharma could provide methods by which I could travel the path to happiness. It was my experience of pain and suffering which prompted my actions. I wanted to end my pain and suffering, so I began the path of the solitary realizer, Pratyeka-Buddhayana. I started to practice for my own benefit in the hope of improving my situation. And I think it's interesting here that Ngakma Nor'dzin mentions the word confidence, because within Buddhism, there isn't the idea of blind faith, that you just have faith in something with nothing to back it up. But through study and through practice, confidence can be gained, which is a more secure foundation for moving forward and engaging further in practice. So confidence is very important. However, once I started to practice with a greater degree of commitment, I began to see the benefits in my life and the changes in my state of mind. Conscious of this, I became increasingly aware that there were many other beings around me who were also finding their experience of life painful and unsatisfying. At this point, I understood that I could not disconnect myself from others, and it was not actually possible to be truly happy when others around me were so obviously unhappy. In this way, I naturally began to move towards some experience of the mind of bodhicitta and enter the path of the bodhisattva jnana. This development, in my view, made me want to live my life in a manner that would do as little harm to others as possible and hopefully would benefit them in some way. So this is the traversing of the first three of the 9 vehicles. And there seems to be quite a logical progression there in terms of gaining further interest, practicing, gaining confidence, and wanting other people to share in the benefits that you've experienced. Then, if we move on to look at Tantra, Ngakma Nor'dzin says 6 levels of Tantra can be viewed in terms of how they reflect human psychological development from infancy to adulthood. And so we'll look at that as we go through the Tantric vehicles. Excuse me. Now, the Tantric vehicles in this presentation are divided into the outer tantras and the inner tantras. And these are connected with where the yidam, or awareness being, exists within the views of these tantras. Now, it's a bit of a gear change in some ways to move from sutra to tantra, because there is such a difference in the basic view, going from the need for renunciation to the need for transformation. But it's the practices of sutra that can give us that settled nature of confidence, that settled nature of working with our emotions that allows us to open up and look at other possibilities. It's also going to be the case that in the real world, as you might say, places don't practice sutra in isolation. So even a place that is based in sutra, there will be some tantric practices if it's a Himalayan Buddhist center. So there will be some exposure to tantric practice as a possibility. Formally, you're introduced to tantric practice through empowerment. And with empowerment, there is the possibility of understanding the experience of the awareness being, having that as something that you can sense and understand during the process of empowerment. There's something of an everyday equivalent of that, because in any area in which you are seriously interested, there's the possibility of seeing how other people are who are experts in that area, and seeing the way they hold themselves, the way they hold their guitar or violin or whatever it might be, and getting a sensed feeling of the nature of what it would be like to have that level of expertise. So even as we move into Tantra, it's not something that's entirely beyond our everyday experience. So if we look at Kriya Tantra to begin with, this is the outermost of the Tantras. With Kriya Tantra, the awareness being is quite distant in a sense, on high, you might say, pure and the source of blessings. The awareness being is someone from whom you can receive blessings to your state of mind. Kriya means action, and it's because the Tantras here are concerned with ritual, conduct, and purification. And this has an effect on how you act, how you look after yourself, how you dress, what you eat. The whole sense of it is to be able to be in the presence of the awareness being, almost as a supplicant in a way. Now, within, from the point of view of the Aro Tear and the teachers within the Aro Tear, things, the outer tantric views are generally not taught, because for a lot of people who come to Buddhism, they've seen something very much like this in terms of Christianity, and they may be moving from that. But it's interesting to see that reflection within these tantric stages. So the yidam is always visualized externally, and the practitioner recites their mantra as a way of generating the sense of the yidam and beginning communication with the yidam. Then we move into Upa or Charya Tantra, where there is an equal emphasis on external contact, external conduct, and internal meditative experience. So there is still that sense of ritual, still that approach to cleanliness, but we're starting to practice more in terms of inner meditation practices, or have that view. And the yidam here is seen as someone on a brother or sister or friend who is on an equal level with us and is visualized as being in front of us rather than someone at a great distance. So throughout the tantric stages, the yidam is coming closer to us, or you could say we are moving closer to the yidam. So this is a bridging phase between Kriya Tantra and Yoga Tantra. So it has some of the activities of Kriya Tantra and the views of Yoga Tantra. In Yoga Tantra is union. We're talking about union with the awareness being. So here the practitioner is inviting the awareness being and inviting the awareness being to come to them and dissolve into them. So we're still practicing from a point of view that the awareness being is out there, but that it's possible for the awareness being to come within us and become part of us at that point. From the point of view of meditation, once that is happening, then the environment is envisioned as being the pure environment of the yidam. And it's said that even at that stage, practices of purification can still be used as a help to assist in that practice. Then we move towards the inner tantras. The first of these is Maha Yoga. And in Maha Yoga, rather than inviting the yidam to come to us, the practitioner themselves arises as the yidam. But it's said that this takes place quite gradually, and that it's built. The sense of becoming the yidam is practiced through precision of meditation, through precision of envisionment. And the practices as adjuncts to the Maha Yoga practices of arising as the yidam and practicing their mantra and viewing phenomenal reality from the point of view of the yidam. They're also the beginnings of Tsalung practices. These are the practices of the subtle body to do with the subtle channels, subtle airs, and subtle essences that you find in the practice of Kumye, for example. So that starts to become part of the practice as well. Anu Yoga takes this a step further in that the arising of as the awareness being is instantaneous. There is no need to visualize, build, and construct in that sense. The arising is immediate. I think when I say visualize, you could say sensate, because it's not always simple or easy for people to create a picture or even to self-arise in the sense of having a clear image of what it might be like to be that awareness being. But if we've been introduced to the practices of the awareness being through empowerment, then that sensation of what that's like is the self-arising as the awareness being. So there's not necessarily any need to struggle with any of that. If you can't see it, but you can feel it, then you sensate the sense of the awareness being. And in Anu Yoga, there is further emphasis upon Tsalung practices. So there is the practice of the yidam, but there's a lot more in terms of the Tsalung practices. In the Aro tear, we have ordinations within both Maha Yoga and Anu Yoga, for example. And in Maha Yoga, the ordination is that of the Ngakmas and Ngakpas, and has that emphasis in ritual, mantra, and those aspects of practice. And in the Ati Yoga, we have the ordination in terms of Naljoma and Naljorpa practitioners who have a much greater emphasis on the physical yogas and those practices. But both can practice both. But that's where those ordinations come from. And then lastly, there's Ati Yoga, which is equivalent to Dzogchen. In terms of the 9 vehicles, it's called Ati Yoga because it's a continuation of the yogic vehicles. But in terms of its practice and its view, it's equivalent to Dzogchen. Now, the view of Ati Yoga is the realization that all phenomena are primordially pure, which is a vehicle where if you're there, you're there. If you're not, you're not. And one of the other vehicles would be one that you'd practice. And in this system, you could practice Maha Yoga or Anu Yoga and gain that sense of all phenomena being primordially pure, or arisings as being liberated in an instant. So, as Ngakma Nor'dzin said in Spacious Passion, what you have moving within in the Tantras is moving into phases of greater maturity. From the point of view of Ati Yoga, that is where we are, but it's not necessarily where we feel we are. So the practices of Buddhism are those ones that are designed to take us from where we think we are to where Buddhism sees us as really being. And if we look at how we move through the tantric phases, what you're seeing is, first of all, moving more closely to the yidam, so that they cease to be like an external parental figure and gradually become part of our own nature. And this is just a kind of the equivalent to growing up, in terms of no longer needing your parents to be there to tell you what to do. You've grown up, you've matured, you now know what to do. And as we move through that, that just becomes more and more part of our nature, until, from the point of view of Ati Yoga, the yidam themselves is no longer required in the sense of practice, because we have realized those qualities in a non-symbolic fashion. So, in conclusion, what we have with the 9 jhanas is really the possibility of beginning at any point, however we happen to find ourselves, with the sense that there is progression from initially simply having some sort of vague interest, through the various sutric phases, through the tantric phases, to full realization, if we follow this path to its conclusion, with a sort of logical, in a sense, stepping stones from one to another, that each vehicle indicates the possibility of the next vehicle. Not that they have to be practiced that way, but I do appreciate that they are arranged in a fashion that encourages you to look at them and to be able to then see where you find yourself, and therefore what practices are appropriate. So I see it as very much a compassionate arrangement of teachings that has that sense that you can start wherever you happen to be and move towards complete realization by moving through the vehicles.
I think there's a great deal of scope for reality in the 9 vehicles, because it starts with people who might just want to go and set up the shrine, or go to teachings occasionally but not really do anything else. And there's the sense in these vehicles that even that person is actually at Ati Yoga. They have beginningless enlightenment, but it's like they're not ready for it to engage in any practice that can lead them to realizing that. And there's that sense of progression. But as you say, you might find yourself suddenly in a different space. So you could jump to a different vehicle quite easily.
Yes, I like that sense that it includes what you can sometimes be referred to as church on Sunday Buddhism, that you go along, you listen to what's happening, and you go away, and that's enough. Because when it becomes something that people feel has to be all or nothing, sometimes nothing wins. And so to have the wonderful Srivakas included within the vehicle, because with the idea that there are multiple lives and that our experience of practice can become part of us and continue, people who are greatly interested in practice now at some stage were slightly interested in practice, and that experience and how the sanghas behave towards somebody who has that interest is really quite important. You don't have to be gung-ho about it. I come to the teachings, I listen to the teachings, I go away again.
Yeah, it's about having respect for everybody.
Yes, yeah. So I think it's a very kind arrangement of vehicles.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure that has clarified the 9 vehicles for everybody.
And everyone can read Spacious Passion and find teachings in there.
Thank you.